I wanted to talk about therapy, and I've said again and again that I've encouraged people to try therapy um, because even though there really isn't a cure for avoidance, um, generally you can get something out of it. Um, if for nothing else, you've got validation because usually the people who um, contributed to your avoidance, there's no way they would ever acknowledge what part they had to do with it. So, if nothing else, therapy is good for that. Um, and I also said that you can always fire your therapist, and I sort of say that like, okay, yeah, it's possible. It is definitely possible. I recently had an experience. It wasn't my therapist, but I had to basically fire workers for a family. And so I wanted to say that yes, it is possible, and you do it, and life is better afterward. If you've got somebody that's not working for you, I mean, the thing is that there were a couple situations. One where it wouldn't have mattered what kind of feedback you gave. It was just not going to be receptive. And in that case, actually, that one was kind of hard because the person just didn't want it. Again, no feedback at all. Didn't want to hear that, we weren't going to work with them anymore. Didn't want to hear it at all. And so that one got some resistance. The other one, I thought there was a possibility there, and gave a lot of feedback about, this is, which is hard, is really, really hard. It's a lot easier to basically let things build up until you can't take it anymore and then just snap and say done, or just not show up to therapy or whatever. It's a lot harder to give people feedback about what is going on and how to make things better. This other person, that's what happened, but I've got to say, because they'd heard the feedback and they knew that things really, it just wasn't working out, they were sort of like, yeah. No hard feelings. Ugh, the dumbest phrase of all time. No hard feelings. I don't fire somebody unless there's a reason for it. No hard feelings is the dumbest thing. It was like, okay, there was like, that was sort of the icing on the cupcake that made me know for absolute sure this was the best decision, and that this person can work with us because, they're not doing their job and they don't like us because they can't do their job right. No. But as far as how to do it, whether to basically pull the Band-Aid off and just do it, or if you should, try to hedge. I wouldn't make a snap decision. If for another reason, because they'll come back at you and say this is a snap decision. So you've got to sort of have your ducks in a row and your reasons why. If the reason is that you're uncomfortable with therapy, that is not a good enough reason. I'm sorry. I mean, I shouldn't put judgment on there, but seriously, if somebody is making you uncomfortable in therapy and you're just like out of your comfort zone, that's actually good therapy. So don't ditch that one. But if really, I mean, the problem with these ones was, one, they were, the person that we were working with literally would ignore what we were saying. Ask a question, we would answer, literally ignore it, and go on as if we'd answered something different. No, wrong, no good right there. The second person was absolutely more concerned with their agenda than what we needed. We had it plain. When you go into therapy, you come up with a list of what you're there for, and you agree that these are the things that you're going to be working on and how you're going to approach it, which sounds really scary, but once you've done it a few times, it's sort of like, okay, yeah, then you know that not everything is on the table. For example, in my personal therapy, I've had a lot of people tell me that I should do trauma work. And I don't think so. Like reliving and working through and somehow resolving and coming to grips with everything that's ever happened to me. Way to put me in a mental institution. And the therapist I'm with now is 100% on board with that. And she's just like, yeah, you have enough going on in your life right now with people and trauma currently happening to you. I mean, it's not anywhere near as bad as what has happened in the past, but as far as interacting with people, I would have to get to a point in my life where it's completely settled down, and I really did not have these people in my life. Maybe then I could work on the past, but right now it would just exacerbate what's going on, and I wouldn't be able to function at all. And she's completely like, yep, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. I mean, this is something that maybe they would have suggested for somebody else who wasn't avoidant, who didn't have the personality part of it, who was just not able to interact with people as well as maybe they would want to. Then maybe trauma work would do fantastic for those people. But for me, no. Because just being around a person and interacting with them on a personal level is traumatic for me. And actually, when this all went down, I had my therapist come as a support. She almost said nothing. She just literally sat there, and afterwards she's like, I can see why these people don't understand that you're avoidant, because I was completely compartmentalizing everything. And she said, geez, you were like almost a social butterfly. Because I was introducing them to it, because that was something to do. I could introduce them to each other, and then they could talk amongst themselves and forget about me. Fantastic avoidant technique. But she's just like, if that's how you interact with people, you can pass. And most avoidants do. They try to not stand out and not have anything that would, make people sort of see something odd about them. So if there's any way that I can sort of put myself last and stuff down what I'm going through, then I'll do that. But again, that little interaction is traumatic to me and causes trauma to me, so therefore I can't go through trauma. Anyway, so when you first sit down and figure out what you're going to be doing in your therapy and what the parameters are, then okay, for instance, for me, trauma work, not happening. And that's fine, and that's great, and because I got enough stuff going on otherwise. My therapy is not about going backward. My therapy is about attempting to find a way to go forward. And that's what we do. So in this case, it was obviously not my therapist, because we had our issues, but I think she's doing all right for now. Anyway, this other person was like, okay, this is what we're going to do, and then just ignored everything and wanted to, she was literally doing like her own interests personally. And I had another therapist that did that, actually. I had another therapist. I was almost her therapist. That was unbelievable. She felt that I was avoidant and it was hard for me to talk, so she would just start talking, and she would talk, and would never shut up. She was, I think I've talked about it on here before, She was a recovering alcoholic and talked about her recovery and her meetings. She would talk about other patients with me. Now, these are massive, huge red flags. If you run across these, you want to get rid of your therapist. But again, if you're just uncomfortable with the situation, if you're uncomfortable sharing, if you feel like your therapist is pushing you to share, these are good things. These are exactly what an avoidant person needs in a therapist. I actually have two therapists right now. One of them is directly myself, my own therapist. My second therapist is group therapy with my son. And literally for the first 2 months, literally, I literally threw up in my mouth every single time we drove to her office because it was so awful to me to have to go to this therapy, and everything else was different. She had different techniques. She had things that I had never done that I was, this is not going to work. It was way different. And you know what? It's working. And I'm sort of like, I never said to her, actually I said now, after the fact, now that I've seen that it's working and we're like, yep, going to stick with it. Now I told her, in the beginning I didn't tell her, oh my God, I was like, no, this is not going to work. I have zero faith. This is not going to work. This is going to be a disaster. But I pushed through it, and it was not a disaster, and it worked. And I know I've actually got information on here about the DBT class. Actually, my therapist, my individual therapist I'm using right now, it was one of my DBT teachers in the horrible DBT class that just was a bad fit. And so that was just an awful fit, and it ended badly and whatever. But she is a good therapist, with different type of therapy. So you sort of, you got to pull apart what is the avoidance and what is sort of like a real reason. A real reason would be total personality clash. A real reason would be that, I was nervous going to the therapy, but after the therapy, I was okay. If it was reversed, if I was like absolutely sick, like literally sick, after the therapy, because you'll be uncomfortable, you'll be in shock, you'll be like, oh my gosh. But if you are even more nervous after the therapy, not the, oh my God, I can't believe I just talked about that, not that, but if you're nervous after the therapy, that's a bad sign. But you have to give it a shot. You have to give these people a chance. The two people that we left, one we have been working with, we only see her like once a month, but we've been working with her since April, and it's now beginning of September. And the other person started in July, but that one was way, way, way more obvious that it was just, the first one clearly seemed to have the aims that we needed and wanted to have the same goals, just was like ignoring us. The second one didn't do anything, didn't have the same goals, didn't have the same, just was a total bad match. And that's a little, so that's easier to see. But you've got to give it some time. You've got to give it some time. Unless something's like a dangerous situation, this 2 months, it's probably a little short. I probably, if I hadn't already, had to deal with the first one, I probably wouldn't have gotten rid of the second one so quickly. I probably would have given her another month. But, it happens, and you get over it, and then in the end, it's better, and it was good to have the experience. And it's another example of, this is a red flag. Don't let this happen again.